Hello, and thanks for joining the session. Today we're still working on editing, or rewriting rather, that podcast website. One of the big changes we made in the last few sessions was we went away from using Easy Admin for the main admin for the backend for managing the episodes. Everything seemed to be going great. One of the next things I wanted to do was to add a rich text editor and also enable Symfony Messenger for handling some queued messages. That was until I actually took a minute to try and reload the homepage and see that there's some assumptions based on our new editor, which would have still been the case even with Easy Admin. But yeah, we need to do some work before we can actually move on from here. So what we're going to do is figure out what the problem is, and it's pretty easy because Symfony is giving us exactly what the problem is. Right now, the path for the parameter path for the episode route must have some value, and we're giving it nothing. So if we look here, the little snippet of twig templating, I'm trying to get episode.path. So just knowing the actual model here, I'm pretty sure that the problem is that the path is null. And if I look in our database, sure enough, we're going to find path being null. And these are all going to be for the new episodes we added using the admin. So the admin side was able to handle this just fine. It wasn't doing any links to the actual episodes, but we aren't actually doing this correctly. So what we need to do is figure out a way to make sure that these paths are actually there. And really these paths are slugs. We're going to take some combination of the episode number, and then the title, and generate a slug out of it. And we've already done this with one of the other projects that we are doing for Astrocasts. I'm going to use some of this from my memory, but I think we're going to do it a little differently. I want to make sure that we only change this. I don't think I want these URLs to be super flexible. Like if we change the title, I don't know if I want to have it change the path every time. I think maybe we'll start that way, but we very quickly may decide we don't want to do that. Right now, the reason that the existing paths are already set is we have an ingest script that is doing that for us. So if we look for path, let's see here. It's actually must be in our episode. Episode entity, set path. Where is that coming from? Here, from Jason. So we're setting the path just directly, and we're doing extract path from exported path, and so we're not doing anything terribly complicated here. We're getting information from the export. So what we're going to do, though, is at least initially have it so that it's going to reset everything every time the entity gets updated. So we do have some event subscribers. Let's see here. This was an Easy Admin event subscriber. We don't want this. So I think we could actually remove this entirely. So let's go ahead and remove this. All right. And what we're going to do instead is use, there we go. What we're going to do instead is use a doctrine listener instead. So we're going to do a quick search here so we can copy and paste Symfony doctrine pre-persist, pre-update. So how to work with lifecycle callbacks is going to give us a nice way to do this here. So let's see. Here we go. So we're going to use the services because this is going to make things a lot easier. And this is more or less exactly what we want to do. So we're going to copy this bit of code. And so the convention is to put it in event listeners. So let's create that directory. So these event listeners are different than the event subscribers from Symfony land. These are specifically for doctrine. And let's call this episode slugifier. Then we'll do, what did we do here? We'll do subscriber. Okay. And so we're going to implement event subscriber, which we're going to get from doctrine common. Symfony component event no, we want doctrines. And then we're going to implement get subscribed events, and this is going to give us pre-post or post update and post persist. And then both of those are going to do the same exact thing. So what we're going to do here, get subscribed events is what this required us to implement. So we just needed to know which ones to do. In both of these cases, it's calling index, but we don't want to call index. Let's call slugify, and lifecycle events needs to come from doctrine common persistence. All right, so we're going to do some things here to make sure that this doesn't happen except for when we actually want it to. So we're going to make sure that the entity that the lifecycle event references is an episode. So if it's not an episode, we want to not do anything. So I'm going to change their behavior so it returns early on error cases. So all I have to do now is just return. Now what we want to do is do something more interesting here. So what do we do when this has a value? So we're going to need some way to get a slug. So I'm going to look for a package real quick. I know which one I'm going to use, but let's see here. So let's look for slugify. All right, so concur slugify. It has a relatively straightforward API. It has a bunch of integrations into other frameworks, but we don't really need it beyond that. So what I'm going to do is just require this now. Oh, let me get in the right directory. Okay. I'm going to require concur slugify. And what that's going to let me do is have a slugifier interface implementation. So let's see here. Yeah, I just get a slugify object. I wonder what these Symfony 2 and 3 integrations. Oh, those are just links. That's weird. All right. Maybe it actually ships with a bundle. Bridge, Symfony. It looks like it does have a bundle, but I don't know. I'm not sure what purpose it serves necessarily. It looks like you can configure it. I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to use it out of the box, which might not be the best way to do it, but it is going to be an easy way for us to go. So we have the command here. I'm going to use this as a dependency. So we'll do, I don't know why it did that. There we go, slugify. And then we're going to create our constructor. There we go. So now we should be able to use slugifier here. And what I should be able to do is specify, so entity set path to, and then we should do this slugify, and then we're going to use the title. But we're going to do some additional things as well. So we'll do sprintf. We'll do episode number and then title. Actually, let's do episode number as a string as well in case we have any of those like 1.5 episodes. All right, so now we need the episode get number and entity get title. So this should generate a path that is that contains the episode number and the title. Let's see what others. Let's just see what it looks like out of the box. So let's go ahead now. I think we need to double check our services file. Make sure it's looking for the right places. So let's see here. So we need to tell it that things in that directory should be tagged with doctrine listener. So we need to do this. So services. Okay. So everything should already be treated specially, but let's go ahead and add controllers. So let's do app, and then I think we had, what is it? Event listener. So this is going to be a resource, event listener, and for all of these now, oh, I didn't need that. For all of these, I want to make sure that they have this tag added. So tags. I don't think I need to specify which one. I think we just specify it as a doctrine event listener, and I think it'll do the rest. So I think that's all we need to do for this one to be picking up. So let's go ahead and look now. So we got path null. If we go into our admin directly, something went wrong. Doctrine event listener must specify the event attribute. All right, so that's different than what I had done before. All right, so let me look at how I did this before, just so that we can get through this more quickly. So we're going to look at Astrocasts, services. Let's see for event listener. Doctrine event subscriber. All right, so I had that backwards. Let me see if that what they mentioned here. Okay. So they do have it mentioned at the top, but the example down here talks about an event listener. So the difference is that the event listener needs to be specifying what it's listening for, versus the event subscriber, where the framework asks the event listener which things it subscribes to. So I think that's the main difference. So let's see if we get through here. Oh, something else is wrong. Arguments. References class, but no such service exists. So this is a case where auto wiring falls down. So auto wiring isn't kicking in here because it's referencing resources that are in a different namespace. So everything under app should be auto wiring by default. Here we need to actually specify the classes, and then they will also be auto wired. And also it looks like I can be asking for the Slugify interface. Let me use that instead. Slugify interface, just because, why not? Let's bring that in. I don't know if we need Slugify anymore then. There we go. All right, let's see how this works now. All right, everything's back in order. Username, so we'll go back into an episodes. So we have these episodes here. So let's look at episode 75. Let's edit it and just say hi. That should be enough to trigger our listener. Okay, so this is great because it actually is calling our code. So let's see here. So Slugify, didn't actually rename here. Let's try reloading. There we go. So episode 75 should now have a path. If we reload here, we do. Well, it just reordered things, so Not sure it actually did the work that I expected it to. Because we're not actually... Let me double check how we were doing that here. Listener. Yeah, it should have been fine. So set slug. We're calling set path. Let's see if it actually does save high. Is path showing up here? No. So I wonder if it's post persist, if I actually post persist, post update. I wonder if I have to did I switch this to pre? I did. Pre persist and pre update. All right, so we're gonna switch these around. So the problem is that it's actually calling this code. It's just that it's not actually saving it. So this happens after the object's already been saved. So let's do post persist. Change that to pre persist, and post update to pre update. All right, now it should actually do what it's supposed to do. We'll say hello. Awesome. And now we have episode 75 new. So it's doing more or less the right thing. So we'll look at the next one next, and we'll do, it's been a while again. So as long as I make a change to something, it's actually going to show up on here. So here we see the next one. So it's doing what it's supposed to. Let's get the last episode. Let's see, that was episode 66. Another new one. And then we should be able to reload our homepage again. The downside to this is that if I run the import script again, it's going to override the URLs for all of them. I'm almost positive that's going to be the case. All right, exception been thrown. Now we're seeing another error on some of these. Wasn't expecting so many problems with the data being in a weird state. So episode duration. So we have some of our helpers here. So let's see if we can pull those up. Helpers, friendly duration. Let's do, if there is no duration, I guess it's unknown. So if duration is not set, I'll do is set first. It's empty. So this data will come out here. There. We're gonna do the same thing. File size is empty. Argument one generate URL must be apps if null given. All right. So let's see, where is generate URL being called? So anytime fly system. So generate URL must be an instance of, so what I can do is say null, if not file, which is not good, I'll admit. We really shouldn't be trying to generate this URL if it's empty, but at least here we can load the page now. So ideally what we need is something a little smarter there. Okay, cool. So now we're at least able to render the home page, and we're now 20 minutes into what was already going to be a busy episode. All right, so hello, Tobias. Looks like Tobias Nyholm has joined on chat. Thanks for joining today. Okay, so let's quick go into see if we can get the Trix editor up and running. So this is something that that Dave, the co-host of that podcast, had been talking about a while ago. He mentioned wanting to try and do something with Trix. So Trix is a editor for doing sort of WYSIWYG style stuff. So what I'd like to do is see if we can get this installed on the back end, at least for a couple of the couple of the sections. So for example, the show notes and the iTunes summary. I'd like for those to be edited this way. So I have never touched the code before, so it'll be interesting to see if that's even doable. Looks like we can link directly to it. I'm guessing we can probably install with npm or yarn. npm js. Or maybe they just don't let you do that. Okay, this does look like it works. Include in the bundle. Integrating with forms. All right, so let's add it to the project first. Let's see what we can get going on here. Populating with stored content. Integrating with forms. To submit contents of a Trix editor with a form. Okay. Populate it. All right, so contents inside Trix editor tag. It looks relatively easy to understand. Let's see what we got here. It's waiting. Okay. It's going to take some time to do that compiling. So where are we at? So these are more complicated things that I don't think we need to do. All right, so the main thing is we need a hidden field that contains the content. So if we go to our admin, go into our admin templates, episodes, let's do create. All right, so we have these fields already. We have content. So this is already generating using the form component. We could remove the label potentially in the form widget. So it's going to be a little weird because it doesn't necessarily make sense, but let's do episode type. We can actually make this the iTunes summary and the content hidden type instead of text area type. So let's try that. Hidden type. Let's do that for both of these. And let's just see if the editor changes. Yeah, so it still has the label, but it's not doing anything with it. So I think that's more or less what we wanted. See, are we done? Yeah, okay, so these are in here. So we can actually use it now. So let's go and figure out what we need to do to bring it in. Trix.js. I currently don't have things broken out very well. So I don't have like an admin entry point. So let's maybe add that. Let's go into Webpack config.js. Right now we have app and we have player. What I think we want to do here is add entry admin. And what this will do is allow us to have some different JavaScript stuff just for the admin. And if we go to base for admin, it's bringing in app.js. We don't want that. We want just admin. So essentially the new admin file, or the new admin.js that we haven't created yet, will contain probably an overlap of what's in app.js. So let's go into assets.js and see what we have here. So there's a bunch of stuff that we added. Here are some of the images that were required. So let's go ahead and do app. All right, so admin.js. And we'll do admin.scss. We don't need any of these, but what we will need is Trix. So we're gonna have to do something with that in here, which we can do in a minute. So first let's go to CSS, app CSS, to admin SCSS. All right, and we're gonna get rid of all of our stuff here because we don't really need these at all. Eventually, we're gonna put other stuff in here maybe, but for right now, it doesn't matter. And then we need to start watching our changes. Let's do yarn watch. Let's see if it gives any errors out of the box here. It's possible I've missed something. Okay, so everything looks good from that perspective. If we look in public build, we see admin.js, so that's right. So I think that's good. So what we can do now is go into admin.js and require Trix. Is that all we need to do? Let me see if it gives me any more hints here. So yeah, I think that might be all we need to do. And then we need to include Trix.css inside our app.scss. Or no, sorry, in our admin.scss. Include Trix. I actually don't remember how to do this. What was I doing in here? No. Might be wrong. I think I might have to include that in the admin.js. Trix / there we go. All right, let's see if we can rebuild. All right, that's good. And now what we can do is make sure this page still loads, and then try doing the Trix editor things. So let's do, here we go. The thing I'm not sure about is the how these names are going to be labeled. So we have background credit, content. So we need content HTML. The widget needs to point to the ID for here. So whatever this is going to be. I need to double check and see what it's actually setting. So we've got content HTML, input. Let's see where it's, does it have an ID? It does have an ID. I wonder if I can get access to that ID. Let's do dump content HTML. Let's just see what kind of data we have to work with in here. All right, vars ID. Okay, so we could do, let's just make sure that this works right. Form.content HTML.vars.id. We don't need that. Let's see if it works. It does, but it's not getting the styles correctly. Let's see here. So we're requiring admin CSS. We are requiring Trix SCSS. Trix. Import CSS. Okay, let's see if I can do that. So it looks like we can do this in the SCSS file. Let's see if it build fails. No. Okay, tailwind components, invalid CSS. Let's see if that works. Tobias is suggesting I point directly to the path. Module not found. Node modules. Let's see if that works. Looks like it did. Thanks, Tobias. That's awesome. I still get lost in the npm includes when you need the full path and when you don't. It's kind of annoying. I'll get it someday. So let's see if this actually, well, it still doesn't pull it in. Let's see here. Not sure why it's not. Let's see. Oh, I wonder if I'm doing app.css. I need to do admin.css. I need to go back to admin base. Similar to what I did here, I need to do this. So it's possible it was working at some point in the past. It just wasn't rendering correctly because I wasn't bringing it in. Okay, cool. So now I can do world. Let's see if I can save it and if it just works out of the box. Okay. Was this the one? Yeah, cool. So let's see if we go look in our content. Let's see. Content HTML. And Tobias said to try the first solution that I had. I am going to try that. That's a good call. Because it's like I mentioned, it's possible it was working. I just wasn't referring to the right place. So we'll require Trix dist Trix.css and see if it still works. So this is working. The problem is that I can't see that it's working in the database. So I'm not 100% certain. Yeah, this works. Cool. So this worked great. So it was a combination of two things, and sometimes that happens where you fix something and then you fix something else. And meanwhile, the first thing would have worked. So I like this, but I agree this is prettier. So I'm going to try and add another one of these for the iTunes summary. So we'll do same thing here. All right, so and let's save it. All right, so it's, as far as I can tell, it at least thinks it's saving. Cool. So now we actually see it. So this is hello world. And then for iTunes summary, we have a div. All right, cool. So I'm sure there's more things that I'm going to be able to do with this editor. I'd like to be able to trim the things that we don't necessarily need to have on here. One thing I would like to do is find maybe, I don't remember if this episode had them. I'd like to bring in an episode that actually had content. Here we go. Cool. So it's actually bringing this in correctly, which is awesome. So it still looks right. I might even want to have the ability to like jump to a full screen editor or something like that. I don't know if Trix actually has that. Sort of like one of these Zen editors where you can do like a full screen and be able to type stuff and not have to be forced to just play in this little tiny area. But at least for now, I'm going to call this good because it's more or less doing what we needed. I did need this to be HTML, and I would like to be able to embed HTML, especially the iTunes summary, into the MP3. Which is kind of the goal that I have for this for tomorrow. So the next bit I'd like to do is see how quickly I can get Symfony Messenger installed and up and running. So what we're going to do is head over to Symfony SH and double check for Messenger. I guess that we have an alias just for Messenger, so I'm going to install that. So let's see what we got here. Messenger. And behind the scenes, I already have Rabbit installed. So let's see if I can do localhost. Here we go. So I already have Rabbit set up locally. I have a queue already set up for Astrocasts default. So I'm going to use something similar to this. I'm just going to do that podcast default. And I'm going to use the same queue for both command style things and event style things, mostly because it turns out that the Symfony Messenger when you run the message to consume things. You specify the bus that you want to use, and that's great. But if you're using something like Heroku, where the number of things actually listening matter for the price tag, it can be better just to keep everything on one queue. So that's where I'm going to be at for now. So this added messenger transport DSN to .env. So if we go to our .env file, we'll see there is messenger transport. So we can use this value pretty much as is. We don't have to do much changing. The thing that I didn't find very easy to begin with was this messages is actually the name of the queue. So I guess it makes sense because when we have like a database URL, this is the database name. It just wasn't clear, especially since I was using a cloud-based Rabbit for deployment. One of these is sometimes called a virtual host or something like that, so I wasn't sure. But what we're going to do is call this now that podcast default. So we don't have to do anything. If we want to create that podcast default as a queue and set special privileges on it, we can do that. But if we don't do that, it's just going to be created with the default settings. So we're going to leave that like this for now. One of the things that it recommends is, where was that? Composer require AMQP. So I already have that installed. Oh wait, I might not. I might not, because this is a new project. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so now what we can do is we can go in and look at the configuration for that. So the config for Messenger. And the default here is just going to be called AMQP. And then it's going to use the transport that we just uncommented in the .env file. Routing. So this is where you can get very specific with how you want your messages routed. For our purposes, we are going to use all messages. So we're going to do a star mapping to AMQP. The other thing I like to do that I found from the docs, actually, let's see, where were here we go. The docs talk about how to set up buses. Let's see, type hints and auto wiring. There we go. So I'm going to set up 2 different buses here. Command bus. I'm going to check how I did that on my other project real quick, because I thought I did that slightly differently. And the idea being that you want to be able to type hint the type of thing that you want to do. So you can specify the name of the class that you're using. So let's do messenger. Okay. I guess this is what we need to do. All right, so we'll set up the default bus. So if you don't specify one, you can use the default bus. Otherwise, I'm going to set up 2 different buses. I'm going to set up the command bus and the event bus. I thought I actually had actual classes. So let's see what I have here. Source. Yeah, because I have command bus and event bus. All right, well, let's do the same thing here. So we'll do command bus and message bus inside source. Just because I don't want to put them anywhere else right now. So command bus and event bus. And both of them are going to implement the messenger message bus interface. So the nice thing about the Symfony Messenger component is that it doesn't give you any it doesn't make you go one way or another on this. You don't have to send messages. You don't have to send commands. You don't have to send events. It's pretty flexible, and then you can add these concepts into your project as you see fit. So I'm going to implement methods. So it's just the dispatch method, and these objects both look the same way, and they're essentially just decorators. Decorators around the configuration stuff. Why is default bind to make it work with AutoWire? Tobias is mentioning something about use default.bind. This here, default bus. Binding. Oh, yeah, okay. So this, if I'm understanding what you're saying here, so Tobias is saying there's no need for decoration classes. This binds to the correct messenger bus based on the name of the variable, right? I'll try it this time. I did it differently with the other project. I'm more than happy to try it this way this time. I guess the difference here is, let's remove these. Being able to be explicit about the class that you're bringing in versus the name that you're bringing in is probably the only real difference here. If we go back to services or messenger, so what we can do here is change defaults, which is at the top, to say bind. There we go. Command bus commands or event bus. So the difference is that the object now, when I have something that's going to issue commands or events, is going to ask for a messenger bus interface with this as the name of the argument. Feels a little more magic to me, but I'm totally cool trying this for this particular project. Okay, cool. So let's see here. What can I do to actually test this? So let's do a message. So we'll do messages, and then I think we have message handlers as the other directory name. All right, so for messages, the first one we're going to do, and the thing that we'll probably spend more time on the next session, is going to be inside the, we're going to issue a command. So we'll do messages, commands, and will be process pristine media. So this message is going to have it's only going to have the episode ID, which I think, what do we have for episode? I think the ID is just an actual int. Yeah. So int. I'm not going to do anything special with that except give it a constructor just so that we can do new meaningfully. Otherwise, it's just going to be a public variable. And if we look at the episode controller for the admin section, what we're going to do is on create and on edit. There's other ways we could probably do this, but this is going to be the most straightforward. I'm going to want this method to take a messenger bus interface, message bus interface. Well, there we go. And we're going to get the command bus in this case. And we're going to want to do something with pristine media. So only when pristine media is actually updated, we want to command bus dispatch new process pristine media. Now, the weird thing here, and something I haven't really taken into account, is that this could potentially happen before the entity is flushed. So there might need to be some other things going on here that I would want to work out. But for now, we'll call this good. Episode get ID. And then we'd probably want to do something similar to create as well. I'm not going to do that now because this will leave something for us to work on in the next session. But in theory, that too is going to run into the same problem because I'm not even going to have an ID at that point where we're doing the pristine media. So I need to figure out a different way to do that. One possibility is to do it as an event listener instead. But again, I'm not sure the best way to do that as a doctrine listener. I'd have to know that the pristine media file or pristine media field itself has changed. I can't remember how easy that is to do on a field by field basis with the doctrine listeners. But we can test this pretty easily enough to see if this is actually sending anything to the correct location. So if pristine media is changed, it should be sending a command. So let's see what we have here. Event bus. Unused binding. Let me double check that. To clarify, you can use the dependency injection's binding capabilities to clarify which bus will be injected based on the argument's name. Tobias, if you're still there, this looks like it's trying to bind these variables for everything. And this error to me reads that the SVG extension didn't need event bus, so why did you give it to me? If that's the case, then I don't think I can use this. I'm hoping I'm reading that wrong though. So let's see. So yeah, this SVG extension is passing in base path already. So it's consuming that. I don't want it to get the other variable. Let's see if the backend gives me the same problem. Huh, yeah. If you know a way around this, I'll fix it. Otherwise, I might have to revert and be a little more explicit about what I'm doing here. Because, yeah. I wonder if this is a Symfony version issue also. It could be that in Symfony 4.1, this wasn't working the same way. You are never using event bus at the moment. Is that the problem? Yeah. If that's the problem, then I guess this fixes it, but it's still kind of, it's not immediately obvious what's going on here. Okay. It's slightly less clear than if I had the implementations that were named. Okay. All right, so let's see here. If I save this file, let's do iTunes summary. and nothing happens, everything should still work. And I don't see anything going on here. So nothing has changed. So let me go in now and see if I can actually change the pristine media. Pristine media, choose file. All right, let's give it an image. It shouldn't really matter at this point. Save changes. All right, let's see if that resulted in, it did, cool. So we see a new message on that podcast default. It's just going to sit there until something does something with it. So what we can do here now is get the message, and we can see that it was a process pristine media message for episode ID 14. So we've added the messenger component, which is sort of what we were looking for, was to see if we could at least get it added to the system. We tried a slightly different way of getting the type hinting working and the auto wiring. This way works, I guess. I'm actually surprised that it still works even at the controller level, because it's using service arguments here. But it works. So the difference is that now you can ask for a message bus interface, and it will give you the right one based on the name of this variable. The other way was going to be something like this, where you could type hint it and you would always get it. The advantage in this case is you could do something like bus or whatever, and it no longer matters what the name of the variable is, but it also wouldn't matter, because like right now, I can't do event bus because nothing's consuming it. Otherwise, I could still have my actual event bus implementation and just nobody's using it, and that's totally fine. But as soon as I do this, it breaks, and it breaks in a really weird way, because it's not obvious to me, having never seen this before, why it's complaining about event bus in this case. But it's because nothing is using that. Meanwhile, command bus also isn't being sent to the SVG extension, but it doesn't seem to care about that because something consumed it. So I don't know, that could be a DX issue for that particular exception that could be fixed in the past. But yeah, cool. I'm pretty excited with the messenger component at this point. I've installed it twice now on 2 different applications, and it's working pretty well, so it's pretty cool. The idea, the long-term goal for this, just to be clear, is that when we upload new versions of the MP3, or if I end up having like a button here where I can say, reprocess, and that would trigger the command, I would like for the metadata related to the episode to be embedded in the MP3 itself. So what it would do is download the pristine media, or what the consumer is going to do is download the pristine media and then update the ID3 tags based on the information related to the episode. So, for example, it can actually build the title that goes into the MP3. It should be able to embed our big cover photo, the big square cover photo that is in the MP3s normally. And it should also be able to do things like embed the iTunes summary, so that if you ever end up with the MP3 version that you've downloaded, it actually has everything on it, so you can get that information. Right now, the process is very manual, and I have to actually go in and edit those. So let me pull these up real quick, just so that people can have an idea of what this is looking like. So let's do Dropbox. I think I have them here now. Maybe I don't. Now let's look in documents, that podcast. Here we go. So if we go to episodes, if I open these up, we can see there's all sorts of information in here. So we actually have this image. It would be great if we could also embed the background image as well. We have the name. Occasionally, if things get weird and out of line, the episode name will actually change between episodes. Like I'll originally want to post this one on a certain day at a certain time. And then afterwards, we've actually ended up publishing 1 or 2 episodes since then. I'd have to manually go in and remember to update the MP3 to say episode 53, rather than what it is right now. So there's a bunch of like manual tasks that are kind of a pain, that make publishing new episodes of the podcast kind of annoying. And that's where I'm hoping to use the Messenger component and being able to maintain 2 copies of the MP3, the original one that we uploaded, and then the one that is processed with all of the information with the metadata from the episodes. So that process is what we're actually going to be starting again tomorrow, is looking at building the consumer to start consuming this message that we have waiting for us, which is nothing more than just an ID. So thanks for joining. Appreciate the chats and in comments. And hopefully I'll be seeing you all tomorrow. Bye.